live. Hello and welcome to the Arrrgh Booked Book Club live discussion for A Thousand Ships, which is behind me. We're going to be talking about this book this evening, and I'm just going to wait now because I'm alone. And I'll wait for people to come and talk to me so I have people to discuss with. But I have some tea in my owl mug. Hi, Dania. And so we'll just, oh, hi, Mickey. Oh, good. I'm so excited to talk to you guys about this book because I'm still processing my feelings and my thoughts. I literally finished it this morning, so it's very fresh in my mind. I try to do that on purpose, and it usually makes me feel very stressed out, but also, like, I like having the story like really fresh in my mind when I come to talk to you guys about it, because the couple of times I've read the book earlier in the month, I always feel like I'm forgetting things. So anyway, I'm going to start by saying that I did like this. I thought this was really good. It was not like Song of Achilles good, because like I don't know if anything can be, but I really enjoyed this. And I think part of my enjoyment was that my husband and I had just watched what is it called? Something, I can't think of the name of it. Something like Fall of the City or Fall of Troy. I don't know. It's a show on Netflix that is about the Trojan War. And I thought it was an interesting take on the story, and I was really into it. And I kept thinking the whole time, I'm so glad I'm going to be reading A Thousand Ships next for a book club, because now I really want to read it after watching the show. And so that like got me hyped to read this. And I'll also say that I have not read the Iliad in a long time. And so it's not super fresh in my mind. So I think the show that I just watched, plus like some of the retellings I've read over the last year or so, have been just more in my mind than the actual story of the Iliad, which I now also kind of want to go back and read. But I really liked this. I liked all the different perspective changes. I thought it was an interesting way to tell the story. I also really appreciated that it wasn't told in a linear way. It was sort of like we'll start at the end and go back, and then we'll come back to the end and go forward. And I just thought that was a really interesting way to do it, because it is such a familiar story. I think that it would almost feel redundant to just tell it beginning to end. So I really like that. I really enjoyed seeing the story from a different angle, because again, it's a really like well-known story. I feel like it's one that most people are familiar with. Even if you haven't read the actual like epic poem, you still know the story. And so seeing it from a different angle was really interesting. I liked that we get to see a side of the story that hasn't really been explored much, or that you get peeks at in the story, but like now you get to go deeper. One of my favorite characters in the whole of the Iliad has always been Cassandra. I've always just felt this empathy for her. I don't know if I've always been intrigued by her character and like what she goes through over the course of the story. Just the fact that she knows what's happening, what's going to happen, and no one will listen to her. I don't know. I just always really liked that. So I really liked getting to see Cassandra and what she's going through throughout the story. I think my favorite perspectives were when we get to see Cassandra and the Trojan women. Those were my favorite sections, getting to come back to that. So yeah, why don't we kick this off with, what was your favorite perspective that you got out of the story? Or was there one you just didn't like? I'll say for me, the Penelope ones were not my favorite. Not until the end. I think by the end, she started to grow on me, but I really didn't like that she was essentially just retelling the story of the Odyssey, which is not my favorite of the epics. I much prefer the Iliad to the Odyssey. And I didn't enjoy that her letters to her husband were essentially just her recounting what he was going through. And I'm like, I don't care what Odysseus is going. I know what that was. I want to know what Penelope is going through. So I did not enjoy her sections as much. So yeah, favorite was Cassandra and the Trojan women. Least favorite was Penelope. I found myself skimming her stuff and just like, let's get to the next part. I did start to appreciate the Penelope sections more though, towards the end when she's getting frustrated and she's just like, so I see you're just spending time on Circe's island now. Oh, I understand what that is. Like she's getting snarky and I don't know. That I liked it a little bit better, but overall, I don't know. Penelope's stuff just wore on me. Oh yeah, Hecabe is an interesting character. I liked her stuff too, um, and what she was dealing with, and that he did respect her. Yeah, I did like her stuff with Odysseus because I feel like he did seem to like respect her and treat her like the royal that she was, even though everyone else was like, now they're slaves. They don't matter as much anymore. Um, I also really like the Andromache stuff, which on the show we watched, I think Andromache was done in a way that was sort of like shrewish, and I didn't like that on the show. In the book, A Thousand Ships, I think she was done really well. I really liked her stuff, and I like that we end with her because she's the one that goes on to have sort of life after, where else everyone else was basically dead by the end of the story. I also thought it was interesting that we never get a Helen chapter because I mean, I don't I assumed we would because she's sort of the main character in the story, in that like this is all because of her and Paris. But I thought it was interesting that we only get to really see Helen from other people's perspectives. So I found that really intriguing and an interesting choice. So I did find a couple questions so that we could talk about this and have a discussion instead of just me rambling. So tangent off of oh yeah, Ononi. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Ononi is an interesting character too, and again, you don't really see too much with her. But so yeah, going off of my tangent about Helen, why do you think Helen is more reviled than Paris in the story? And to me, I'm gonna say that would be sort of a just the patriarchalness of the tale. You're gonna, even in a feminist version, we still aren't supposed to like Helen. And the idea of this woman causing a war of her own like desires, like following her heart, leaving her husband, and then not just her husband, but leaving her daughter behind and going to another city. And yeah, it seemed like they still, even in a feminist version of the story, we're still not supposed to like Helen, and we're not supposed to be okay with what she did. And I also think they use her in the story, in any version of the story. I think Helen's beauty is almost like her weapon. She knows that she's beautiful, and it's built up like that she's just this perfect woman, and or the perfect idea of what beauty is, and that she can sort of sway people because of that. And I don't know, I feel like they we're not supposed to like her, we're not supposed to empathize with her because she's done this thing that is clearly despicable, and that she's abandoned her family to go and have this affair. um so yeah, I feel like no matter what you do with this story, you're not supposed to like Helen. But I feel like we still shouldn't like Paris either. I feel like he's often cast as a hero. And I mean, I don't think that they necessarily wrote him as a hero in this story either, but I feel like you're supposed to think of him that way. Whereas I don't think he was. And I don't think he deserves that honor, because he clearly was more of a spoiled child, and like this was him getting what he wanted one more time and causing a war because he just had to have Helen. Um and so for her to just be like hated makes sense, but also he should be hated too because he is kind of a spoiled brat. So I agree with that. He was definitely a spoiled brat and was never held accountable for his actions, I don't think. I mean, he is killed in the story, so I guess you could say that's him being held accountable, but not really, because his family didn't care, or didn't seem to care, that he was the downfall of everything. Um, so yeah, I think no matter what, we're not supposed to like her, and that's why she's still a reviled character in the story. But it was interesting to see the other women talking about her and saying like, even though I hate her, I'm still drawn to her because she's so beautiful. So that's interesting to me. And then off of that, how does Helen use her beauty, and how do others treat her because of it? And is her beauty a blessing or a curse? I think in her case, it has to be considered a curse because her life is sort of revolves around men claiming her because of her beauty. Um, and I find that kind of sad, but also like it makes you less empathetic to her too, I think, because she does sort of use that as a weapon in a way, like to control people around her. And I wish I could think of the name of the show on Netflix. What was it called? The Fall of a City? Troy, The Fall of a City? Maybe that's what it was. Because on that show, I feel like she was trying to use her beauty more than she does. Whoop. I don't know what just fell behind me. Something just crashed to the floor. But yeah, so I think she's definitely nothing more in the story than like this image of beauty that you either love or hate. Um, is her beauty a blessing or a curse? I think in her case, it's probably a curse because I don't think. Yeah, I would say it's a curse because it definitely doesn't end well for her. I don't know what happens to her after. I assume nothing good. Um, I don't know. I think in the story they talk about how like she won't be killed because no matter what, Menelaus just wants her as his wife because she's this beautiful prize that he wants to sort of his trophy wife, I guess. Um, so yeah, I think that nothing goes well for her, but she's not gonna like die because of it. Okay, given that Hecabe was queen of Troy and must have presided over many executions and wars, do you sympathize with her revenge for her family's death? Um, I do sympathize with her to a point. Um, because I mean, it's sad that her whole family dies basically, and she's left alone. And that doesn't mean like she was a good person necessarily, but it was still very sad to like see that happen to her. And then I don't know how I feel about the vengeance stuff. Like it's fun to read, but would I do that? No. And like it's hard to know like who is really to blame for what happened. Like I know I can't remember anybody's name. There's too many names. The man she ends up killing, she sees him as like selling out her family basically, and maybe to a point, but who do you really go to vengeance when your whole family is killed by the Greek soldiers? Like, and most of them died too. Like, I mean, Achilles doesn't survive. And he's the one I can see her being the most vengeful towards. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if I necessarily sympathize with her for the vengeance stuff, but I've definitely sympathized with her overall. Now let's talk a little bit about Penelope. Even though I didn't really like her chapters, um, Penelope has little sympathy for Circe and Calypso, But were they also just women protecting themselves? I think this is an interesting perspective, and that we didn't really get to see. I would have liked to have a Circe chapter or a Calypso chapter or something like that, just so that we get some of that added to the story. We only see it through Penelope writing letters. But yeah, I do think that they weren't necessarily doing what they did out of evil. They were just, again, women who were doing what they needed to do to survive. And of course, Penelope's going to see it through the eyes of a wife who is left at home alone while her husband's off living with these women for years at a time and behaving as if he has a new wife. I understand her like disgust and anger of them, but also I would have liked to see that. Like I would have liked a Circe chapter and like getting her side of the story instead of only seeing her through Penelope. Which goddess do you like the most, and which do you like the least, and why? Which goddess do I like the most? I don't know that I liked any of the goddesses, to be honest, although I did find their chapter funny when they're arguing and they're trying to prove or get Paris to choose them, and they're like, oh, we're doing this, are we? Okay, then. They start like stripping off their clothes and all of that. I think they're all pretty terrible. I don't know. I don't think I liked any of them, because they're not written to be likable, I don't think. I think you're supposed to like maybe like Aphrodite a little bit more, but not really. Like I don't know, I didn't really like any of them. Did you guys have a favorite goddess? I don't know. I will say this has like really made me want to go pick up Circe by Madeline Miller, because I read Song of Achilles and I loved it. Still like one of my all-time favorite books. And I haven't read it since then, which I also want to reread that, but I haven't had time. But now I really want to pick up Circe, because now I need that. I need more Greek mythology, apparently. I really need to pick it up. I just pulled it off the shelf today. I'm like, do I dare add this to my May TBR? I don't know if I'll get to it this month, but I definitely want to read it like as soon as possible. So yeah, other thoughts on the story? Was there a perspective that you wish you got more of? There was a few characters in here. We only get one little chapter. I also really like the Calliope, I don't know if I say it right, Calliope chapters. The muse of epic poetry. I love her like sassiness. Like, oh, you want me to come help you write this poem? Well, I'm gonna write it my way. Like, I don't know. I really liked that. I don't know, did you guys read the afterword? I really liked reading about all the research she did to write this book. There's so much that went into it. Calliope, okay, Mickey says, who is she inspiring? I'm assuming Homer. Homer's the one that wrote the epics, and I believe the Iliad begins with something like, sing muse, sing the story of the wrath of Achilles, or something like that. So yeah, the Calliope stuff is her talking to Homer because he dared like ask her to tell the story. So she's like, well, fine, but I'm going to tell it my way, and you're just going to have to deal with that, which I liked that. And yeah, of course he would just go and write the man version of it, because why not? But yeah, I don't know. I really like this. I ended up giving this 4 stars. Some of the sections were a little bit slow, like the Penelope stuff that I started skimming, I thought was a little bit slow. So I took a star off for that, but I really, really liked this. And I definitely want to search out some more books by Natalie Haynes. I know she has a couple other books out that sound interesting. She also apparently has a podcast on, I don't know what, on the classics, I think. I'm not sure. I haven't looked for that yet either. I just discovered that today. Let's see. Do I have any other notes or things to talk about? Yeah, I did find it interesting reading about all the different things that she used to like study for this. Like obviously she's an expert on the classics and that kind of stuff, but like I didn't even know like there were so many other things with stories from the Iliad in them. Like the story of Iphigenia is from Euripides, has a story about her. Um, and also there's a play by Euripides about Andromache. So that's where a lot of her backstory comes from, which I thought was really neat. I didn't know that. Iphigenia also, I thought was a really sad, sad chapter. She's also another character that I've often thought like, I wish I knew more about what happened to her because that sucks. And then her father basically sacrifices her in the name of wind. He needed better wind, so he killed his daughter to get wind. Like, what is that? Why would you do that? Like, and so I liked getting to see her chapter and getting to hear more of her voice. Oh yeah, no, Hecabe's son does survive. It's Cassandra's twin brother, Helenus, I think. And the only reason he was able to survive was basically because he sold out his family and worked against them with the Greeks, I think. So he survives, and then I think at the end, doesn't he marry Andromache? I'm pretty sure I read that right. So yeah, I really liked that we got to know like what happens to Andromache after, and like that was such a hard thing to read, was her son being murdered in and that she's the one that did it because she couldn't bear the thought of the Greeks murdering her baby. So she murders her baby because she wanted it to be her and not them. Oh, so sad. Yeah, there's so many names. I mixed things up constantly. I kind of needed to like keep notes. I did like that at the beginning of the book we do get that. Like she does give us like, in case you get flustered, you can go flip to the front of the book and read the list of characters and remember who's everybody, because there's a lot and all their names are really hard. I'm sure I'm saying everyone's names wrong, even if she tells me how to pronounce it. I don't know. Like, I'm not sure. Oenone? Is that how you say that? Oenone. It's fun to say. So I don't know. I thought this was good. I'm glad I picked this up. And also it's still up there in like maybe the most beautiful book I've read this year. It's so pretty. I'm obsessed with this book cover. I would frame it and put this on my wall because I just think it's so pretty. And I'm glad the book was good. I was nervous that like this was going to be a beautiful book cover and a terrible book, but I'm so glad that that is not the case. Let me just grab this so I can see. Oh, the paperback has the same cover? That's awesome because that does not always happen. Okay. There, now I got my computer up so I can actually see all the comments because I can't always see them on my phone when I'm talking. See, I was trying to remember what was the name of the other book she wrote because it sounded really good and I want to read that next too, I think. Now I'm going to just add more things to my TBR than I need to. Let me go look it up because I was just looking at it. Oh, here it is. Hold on. Oh yeah, I think this was her first book too. The Children of Jocasta. This one sounds really interesting. This one says yeah, so here's the synopsis for The Children of Jocasta. It says, my siblings and I have grown up in a cursed house, children of cursed parents. Jocasta is just 15 when she is told that she must marry the king of Thebes? Thebes? I don't know how you say that. An old man she's never met. Her life has never been her own, and nor will it be, unless she outlives her strange absent husband. Ismene is the same age when she is attacked in the palace and that she calls home. Since the day of her parents' tragic deaths a decade earlier, she's always longed to feel safe with the family she still has. But with a single act of violence, all that is about to change. With the turn of these two events, a tragedy is set in motion, but not as you know it. In The Children of Jocasta, Natalie Haynes takes a fresh perspective on an ancient story, reimagining in gripping prose how the Oedipus and Antigone stories would look if the oft overlooked female characters took center stage, retelling the myth to reveal a new side of ancient history. Doesn't that sound awesome? I need that. So I'm gonna have to get myself a copy of this because it sounds fantastic. And I figure if it's as good as this, I'm probably going to love it. So, and I don't really know either of those stories. Like, I don't know a lot of the ancient Greek stories. I think we read, what did we read in high school? Like maybe Medea or something like that. If that's how you say that, I don't remember. So yeah, I definitely want to pick that up sometime. I think she has another book too, but I don't think it's on Greek mythology. So anyway, that's all the things I'm planning on reading next. I'm going to pick up Circe by Madeline Miller. I'm going to read Children of Jocasta at some point. Will it happen soon? I don't know. It's possible. So, okay. So does anyone have any other thoughts about 1,000 Ships that we want to discuss or talk about? Do you have a favorite scene or a favorite character? I think we already covered characters. I will say this book definitely made me dislike Odysseus a little more, but I never really liked Odysseus as a character. I don't know. I just didn't appreciate him as a character as much. Oh yeah, this is such a violent story. I think it's easy to not remember that because when you're reading the epic poem, it's so flowery and like you don't see the violence as much as you would if it were written in modern language, which obviously this is, so you see that. But yeah, it's a really violent story. Like there's so much death and so much just rampant murder, and everyone is getting revenge on everyone else. Like this stuff with Clytemnestra, is that her name, where she's getting her vengeance against Agamemnon, who is a terrible character. Like, you know, he's awful. Like, you're not supposed to like him, and he's written to be just this awful person. So like you're rooting for Clytemnestra, but then her kids turn around and get revenge on her too. So like, I don't know, there's just a lot of murder happening in this story. It's very, very violent. And even in the story of the women, I also really liked what the author Natalie Haynes said something about how that you don't ever question the fact that Achilles is a hero, but it's harder to accept these women did heroic things because they're supposed to just be women. Women don't do things, but like Achilles barely does anything in the book outside of complain. He does a lot of whining and complaining and asking his mother for things. He really only fights once or twice, and then he dies by getting shot in the foot. Like, what? Why is he a hero? But all these women who are doing just as amazing stuff, like, why are they not considered heroes? So I love that we get this take on the story. I just think that's great. I really like getting to see the women being center stage. Yes, exactly, Mickey. He's a hero depending on what side you're on. But even so, like, but why? Like, both sides seem to respect the fact that Achilles is a hero, and he doesn't really do anything. Like, Patroclus is more a hero than Achilles is, I think. That's just my opinion, but I think Patroclus was much more heroic than Achilles was. And I think Achilles is more like all talk. Everyone just assumes he's so awesome because his mother was a goddess, and he's super powered because she dipped him in the water. I don't know. It's just, I thought that was an interesting thing to say. Like we no nobody questions that Achilles is the hero, even though he doesn't really do anything in the story to show that. It's all talk. But I don't know. I really liked getting to see what the women went through, and all the moments where she mentions things like, oh, women had to deal with just as much in this war than the men did. Yeah, I don't know. She could have definitely gone deeper in the story. I agree, but I still think it was really good. I like what we got in here. There were a few perspectives that I wish we could have gotten just a little bit more, just because there wasn't enough for me to latch on to them. I liked the characters that we got to come back to multiple times, because you get more of more story with them, so more time to empathize. Whereas like Creusa, for example, you only get the one chapter, and it's sad, but I didn't have enough there to like latch on to her as a character. Whereas I feel like I got a lot from Cassandra and Andromache and Hecabe and even Penelope, enough to like have some matter of like empathy for them and be able to latch on and like be invested in what happens to them as characters. Oh yeah, I'm backing up and reading comments. Sorry. Danny, I agree that the child-centered violence was really hard to read. Like Agamemnon murdering his daughter, lying to her and saying she was coming to get married was really rough. The baby being murdered was really awful to read about. So yeah, definitely was a different time. I mean, I think the world was a lot more violent. I don't know. That's probably not true. I think we like to think that our world isn't violent like that anymore, and that was just a thing of antiquity, but not really. I think our world is still just as violent. I think we have the luxury now that we can watch the violence on a show or a movie, whereas back then it was just like in your face all the time. So I'm not sure that we're any less violent, but it was definitely something that I think you see a lot in stories like this, though, that people don't think as much of it when it's happening right in front of them as we would, yet I think, in our modern world. Yeah, Mickey says the thing that really surprised me was how the women were so resigned to their fate. They were just, okay, it is what it is. Let's move on. I would have been screaming the whole way. Yeah. I think again they knew there was nothing they could do. I thought it was interesting the number of characters, the women who just like, well, I guess I'll die then. Like, what was her name? The other daughter of Hecabe, Polyxena, something like that, was just like, well, I guess I'll just go die. I would rather die than have to be a slave and leave my home. So she was like almost happy to go to her death because it meant she wouldn't be enslaved. Where like I don't know. I see that sometimes in books where a character's just like, well, I guess I'll rather just die. And I don't know. I can't relate to that. I can't think of a scenario where I'd be like, fine, I guess I'll die. But I guess I've never been in a situation like that either. Um, yeah, there was a number of characters that were like, well, I guess I'm okay with it. I'll just die here. But I don't know. Yeah. But I thought it was a little weird though that Polyxena, if that's her name, yeah, was willing to go to her death when she was being sacrificed in the name of Achilles, who murdered her brother. I don't know. I think it was a little weird that she was so okay with it being that that's why she was being killed. Like, I don't know. In that instance, if you're happy to die, just why not just kill yourself so that you're not being made a sacrifice to someone you hate? I don't know. I don't understand that kind of thing, but I'm not of that time period either. So maybe it was a more common fate. Some of that kind of reminded me of the TV show Spartacus. I don't know if any of you have seen that, but there was a lot of that in that show too, where people were just like accepting of their death more because that was just their fate. That's what they that it's what they expect of their life. You know, you either you're going to be okay and you're going to live in this lifestyle that you've always lived in, or you could suddenly abruptly become a slave and like, well, do you want that or would you rather die? So yeah, I don't know, the things I think about when I read. Okay, so, oh, is that what fell? Oh dear, hold on, there it is. Okay. Yeah, Mickey, I do wonder if it's a nobility thing because that's definitely I think if you're a peasant already, a commoner, then life as a slave isn't a whole lot different from what your regular everyday to day life is. Whereas when you've been a princess or a queen, that's an entirely different lifestyle than like being enslaved. So I wonder if that definitely would play into it. Um, or I don't know, maybe it depends too on like what you consider what their life as a slave means. Like for Andromache, she ends up okay in the end. She had to go through a lot of terrible things, but in the end, she gets kind of what she would have wanted, in that she is able to marry a Trojan and go on to build a new city. Um, so I don't know. There's a lot of picking apart to do with this book. I think we could probably talk about it for days. Makes me definitely want to pick up the original and read the Iliad because it's been a long time since I read it, and I don't know. Now I think like I've read and watched so many like different like versions of it. I want to see how that plays into me reading it as an epic. Like, will I appreciate it more? Perhaps. So yeah, next, or not next month, this month, it's May. In the month of May, we are going to be reading The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. I am super excited, but also very nervous to pick this up. I hope that I like it. This is fantasy, but it's based on Chinese history, I believe. And I've heard so many good things about it. And I've been really, really anxious to read it, but I needed like a push. So that's why I'm making it a book club, because now I have to read it because we were having a book club and I have to be able to discuss it. So I'm excited. I hope it's good, but I'm very nervous because like, yeah, the 5th season, whoo, that was a book that I think was just a bit too above my ability to understand. I feel too stupid to get anything out of that. Like I liked it to a point, but I felt the whole time like I was missing out because I'm not smart enough for that book. So I hope that that doesn't happen here. I've always been fascinated with China and Chinese history and that sort of thing. So I'm hoping I've read enough other stuff that the language and things like that won't be too much of a barrier for me. So I'm hoping this is going to be as good as it's been hyped to be. And Sarah will also be reading this month, so she'll be joining us with the live show. I'm excited because Sarah's only going to be here for a couple more months and then she's going back to school. She'll be on campus in the fall and I'll be missing her. And she's leaving at like the middle of August, and that's going to be rough. So I'm excited that she's going to be joining me this month to read The Poppy War. So we'll be reading this together, and yeah, it'd be interesting to see if I end up reading the whole series because I've only bought the first book. I decided I was not going to purchase books 2 and 3 in the trilogy until I read this, because every time I buy an entire series, I only read the first book and never come back to it. So I'm really hoping this is good. So yeah, I'm excited about that. This month is gearing up to be very stressful for me. I am full of anxiety right now because I have to have some oral surgery in 2 weeks, and I don't know what that's going to do as far as my ability to be on camera. So I'm very anxious. I'm having a tooth fully removed and an implant put in, but like they can't put the implant in until it's healed. So I'm gonna have like no front tooth for like 4 months. And they're giving me a retainer thing to wear that has the little tooth in it so that I'm like not toothless, but I don't know. I'm so nervous about it. I don't know how that's going to affect how I talk, if I'm going to be comfortable on camera. I don't know. So I'm very anxious and very nervous. I have a lot of like dental anxiety anyway, so I'm just like, it's a lot. So that's a thing that's going to be happening this month that I don't know. If I disappear entirely, it's because I'm not comfortable with my face on camera. I don't know. My kids have been joking they're going to make puppets and they're going to have a puppet Emily to do all my stuff. So I don't know. I might be completely fine. The dentist assures me that it's comfortable and that no one would be able to tell and all of that, but I'm just so nervous that I'm going to have like a lisp, or I don't know, or that's going to fall out. I'm a mess. so, so I don't know. We'll see how this goes. But yeah, it's a lot right now. I'm also supposed to be talking at a conference virtually at the end of May, which again, I'm like, oh, can it be pre-recorded? But it's not. It's live. So I don't know. I'm nervous that I won't be able to speak and it's going to be a mess. I'm sorry to everybody. So I'll be fine. I'm sure it'll be fine. I always make things so much worse in my head. I don't know. But so that's how my month is going to go. I don't know. It'll be fine. At least Sarah will be here in the live show. So like if I can't talk well, she'll hold up the end of the conversation. I'm sure we'll be fine. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll wrap this up. Thanks so much for coming and hanging out and talking to me about 1,000 Ships. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. And I'm glad we read it together because I like that I was able to like hash it out with you guys after. That's always so much fun for me. So yeah, I can't wait to talk about the Poppy War. I hope that we all like that just as much. So I will see you guys next time. Happy reading. Bye.